All right, today is Monday, March 14th. If you want to, you can go out on the P drive where the class stuff is out here, and there is a folder with today's date on it. If you do go out there and you find that folder, what's in it, just so you see it. Chapter 16, there's just one example that goes through some of the stuff that was discussed in Chapter 16. Chapter 17, there's an example, but this is a multi-step example on UI special effects. Chapter 18, there's a boatload of examples that I put out there. Chapter 19, I put about a dozen examples out there. I also went out to the jQueryui.com and grabbed the series of articles they have there, broke them up and put them into Word documents for you. And this is the source code from your book for chapters 16, 17, 18, and 19. So all that information is out there if you want to take advantage of it. And if you don't, and you're not going to. All right. So, and I did bring my book today. We are going to be going over chapters 16 and 17 today, and then chapters 18 and 19 on Wednesday. This probably won't take any more than the first hour, and it may not even take that long because the chapters themselves are fairly short. I do have your next assignment out there, and that one is not going to actually be due until like the end of April. But it's out there if you want to take a look at it, and we can take a look at it by the end of the period today. So these four chapters really, but especially these two, are on the jQuery UI, which is the jQuery user interface. So if I go out to jQueryui.com, this is what you see out there. There are about 20 or 30 examples right over here. And what I did was I went out and grabbed a bunch of them because what they talk about in these chapters are things like draggable actions, droppable actions, resizable, etc. So all that stuff is out there. So I pull those examples out from in here. And one of the chapters, I think it's 18, goes through most of this stuff that's in here. Bless you. It's 18 or 19. They go through the special effects. So we can talk about a little bit of that stuff. But the idea is what jQuery UI is at least supposed to be is it's kind of, for lack of better words, it's an add-on that you can use over and on top of jQuery. All right? And what it does is, among other things, it provides for you something that's called a theme roller. And what the theme roller is, I don't know if it's here or not, but we'll find it. But the thing is with the theme roller, what it is there are a bunch of predefined themes that are out there that you can go and you can literally add to your website. And they'll do things like round buttons and you know a lot of aesthetic types of things that they'll add to the site. You can grab one of the built-in themes with the theme roller, or you can grab one of the themes, open it up, and tell the system, oh, what I want to do is I want to change this, and I want to change this, so you can customize one of the built-in themes. All right? So that's what's discussed, especially in this next chapter here. So chapter 16, again, starts in your book on page 457, introducing the jQuery UI. Notice how to download and add jQuery UI libraries. Well, I kind of just showed it to you. All right, so you'll see it again in just a minute. How to create custom jQuery UI themes. I'm going to ask that you try to do this for your next assignment. We'll go over that in just a few minutes. All right. New functionality that the jQuery UI provides over just jQuery alone. Using jQuery UI selectors, and how to dynamically position UI elements using jQuery. And again, if you heard me say this previously to you, that the stuff here for chapter 16, there is an example that uses positioning. It's their example from the book. It's a goofy ass example because you can move this thing anywhere you want, but you can't exactly let it go and have it stay there. It'll move all over the place. But it's meant to show you some of the positioning stuff that you can work with. All right, as mentioned, it's an additional library built on top of jQuery to allow you for the opportunity to make your website look even ideally more professional than it would otherwise. All right, because again, it has some of the features like buttons can look rounded, and you can add some of the CSS3 type of functionality in there automatically for you. All right, you'll notice that it's made up of 2 parts. So if you copy it, if you copy one of these themes, what you will get is you will get at least one JS file and one CSS file. That JS file, you should put that in after you've got the jQuery. You understand what I'm saying? So you should put in your link to jQuery itself first, and then put the link into the jQuery UI under it. If you do it in the other way, the jQuery might overwrite some of the stuff in the jQuery UI. All right, and you don't want that happening. As it says here, the JavaScript portion extends jQuery to add additional functionality specific to some of these elements that we'll start looking at in just a minute. The CSS styles them. All right, and the idea is it'll create a style that, so if I've got buttons on every page or whatever, they'll all look like that. All right, you can still override that stuff if you want to, but typically you probably won't want to. All right, so it says here the UI library is made up of several components. We already mentioned the JavaScript, the CSS, and also there are some predefined images that are in there. If you've ever gone out to a site and you've noticed that they've got like a date picker, all right, one of the ways that you can put in a date picker is to use the jQuery UI. All right, and again, I've got a bunch of examples of that out there. We're going to look at it in just a minute. The instructions for your next assignment, in some ways, they're almost, for lack of better words, necessarily vague, because everyone did their site a little bit differently. So I'm saying try to do some of this and try to do some of that. Some of it you might turn around and go, you know, I want to do this, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense to put it in my site. All right, and we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. All right, so you've already seen this. I've already mentioned that to you. Again, there's the jQuery, and then underneath it, there's the jQuery UI. And make sure you put them in that order. We already talked about that. And really, you should have any CSS files should come after that. Okay? So if you go to the download page, and I was just there a minute ago, this is what you see. All right, it's the download builder. And there's more stuff than that. And again, I just brought this up. Oh, I thought I brought it up, and then I must have closed it. Oh, there it is. So if you go to the download, you'll notice there's a bunch of stuff out there. All right. So in addition to the basic jQuery UI theme, you can also use the jQuery UI theme roller, which again is shown in your book, to select different custom versions or customize, also typically known as roll your own theme. Notice, the theme defines colors, border radius, and multiple other styles to be applied to the jQuery widgets and elements. What that means is it will apply the style that you choose to everything, unless you go in and decide you're going to override it. Typically, you wouldn't do that, because what this is designed to do is to give you a very up-tempo looking look and feel to your website. All right? So they're showing in here, it says, this is where you can come in, and by default, these are the themes that are going to be available to you out here. All right, you can work your way down and take a look at them, and there'll be different colors, etc. But if you think, wow, that one looks really good, but I really wish the color of whatever wouldn't look exactly like that, then you can come over here and you can do some customization. All right, the best way to learn this stuff is to just play with it. All right, as always, my suggestion is that if you've got your site looking the way you want it to look, please make a copy and work with the copy. I can't say that too many times. Also, just so you know, there are a lot of really good books out there on this. I mean, books that are just dedicated to this stuff. One of the better ones that I have found, I guess I didn't put it up, it's on yours. And this is, if you copy that folder from the P drive, what you're going to notice, it's pretty big. It's like 80 meg. All right, and that's bigger than most of the stuff I put out there. And I just wanted to show you why it's bigger than that. Because I've got a thing in here called PDFs. And there are 4 or 5 different books that I've found on using themes. Probably the easiest one that I've read so far is the one that's right here that's called jQuery UI Themes Beginner Guide. All right, and this is a full book, 268 pages. Again, well, I don't have time to read that. I understand that. I'm looking through the first 3 chapters of it myself, and that's about where I am right now. So if you look, Chapter 1, Themable User Interfaces. Chapter 2, How to Use Themes. Chapter 3, How to Use Theme Roller. All right, and then there's some other stuff with widget containers, etc., and working with interaction states and other stuff. I wouldn't expect you to take the time to go through all of this, but if you get a chance, it might be worth your time to take a look at this. All right, it's going to be interesting. You know, if you didn't know this already, the last Thursday before the end of the semester, which is May 19th. So if you, and I know you guys aren't here for me for classes on Thursday, I get that. But just so you know, you are more than welcome to come in here on that Thursday between 10 a.m. and noon. The second year people have to, and this will be you in a year, have to take a class called Design and Implementation Projects. It's called DIP for short, because that's the acronym. And I'm inviting 12 people from local business and industry to come in and sit in here, and about a dozen or so people from Blackhawk, different VPs and different other people, and you're welcome to come in too. All right. The reason I'm telling you that is they're going to show the stuff that they've been working on, and at least a couple of the people have told me they're going to be showing their Uber site. So if you want to see what other people have done, all right, you'd be able to do that. Plus, if you're interested in seeing, because one guy, he's been working on his, he's really into sports, and he's been working on this app that he's using for both Android and iOS, and he's going to probably take 10 minutes just to go over his app. And I'll remind you of it before that time comes too. So to access the theme roller, you follow the steps that are shown here. I'm not going to read to you. You can take a look at what's shown there in the chapter. All right. There's the download. All right. There's the different themes that are available, etc. And once you do that, you walk your way through. You'll be allowed to come. Allowed isn't the right word, but to be able to go in there. And if you select the Roll Your Own tab, you'll be able to go in there and do some customization. All right. So they show an example of how this can be done. It's a very simple example. All they do is they have you add all the files, and then they just have you put in a div that has a date picker in it. That's it. All right. I mean, this is all the jQuery that they're putting in there. Okay. All right. So again, as we talked about before, why do you do this? All right. You do it because you want your site to look as professional as possible. All right. I mentioned that thing on the 19th. 2 of the people that I hope are going to be here, one already told me he's going to be here, are the president and vice president of Foremost Media. And I want these people to be able to show the stuff they've done. I want them to blow their socks off. All right? And there's a chance, you know, with some of you, I may be contacting you before the end of the year, because they've told me at Foremost there's a chance. I said, when are you going to know this? They don't know. They're in the middle of moving from one building to another at Foremost. But they might be looking for a couple people who might be interested in paid internships over the summer. All right. If I find that, I'll post it. All right, and I'll let you know. Okay, so some of the other stuff that they talk about in here. This is kind of neat. What this does right here, this code that you see in blue, the first line that says var divs equal, you can see the rest. What that'll do is that'll automatically create a unique div, a unique ID for every div, if it didn't have one. If it has one, it'll just skip its way through there. But it's a way that if you have not given IDs to your divs, it'll do that for you. So you know, even if you've got hundreds of them on a site, you can do them all at once. Or you can remove all of them at once. All right. Some of the rest of the stuff that they talk about in here, you may or may not have reason to use. Getting the scroll parent. All right. As it says, this searches the ancestors of the element and returns the first parent, the first parent element that's scrollable. All right. Would you need to use that? It depends on the circumstance. Get the z-index. So if you've got a site where you've got a lot of stuff that's overlaying a lot of other stuff, you can use the z-index method to find out exactly what the z-index is on all those elements. So if you have to change it, you're able to. All right. They talk about async there, and it says it extends the focus. Sometimes you want to do things for effect, all right, because if you have a really cool effect, let me show you an example of what I mean, what I think at least. And you may or may not agree with this, but this is what one of the, I'll show you this. Maybe I showed it to the other day. I don't remember. But one of the second-year students, what he did for his Uber site. Again, they're doing the same thing that you guys are doing, but they have to add to it. They're doing some PHP and some other stuff with it. All right, so let's see. This is Zane's. Let's see. And I know there it is. So I know it's here. So you'll notice that when he does his, notice what comes up on the screen. Oh, and of course I can't because I've got to run it in PHP. Dip. Same. Dip. That's correct. Except I put it in the wrong place. Fine. Okay, now again, did you notice that when it came up? Did you notice how it faded in and then it slid down? Well, if you really wanted that to stand out, you might decide you wanted to put some kind of a delay in there. All right, just so the effect would be a little bit more recognizable to the eye. Because a lot of times when people get onto a site, you're more concerned that I type in the right address, etc. You may or may not be looking at it right away. All right, as it says, using new selectors in jQuery UI. What does that mean? That means that this is stuff that's specific to the jQuery user interface. All right, so it says one of the author's favorites is the data. You'll notice that many of these start with a colon. As it says, it enables you to filter elements based on a specific key added to the elements using the data jQuery method. For example, the following code adds a color value to all span and divs. The idea, you say, well, I won't remember that. No, the point is what you're able to do with this stuff is a lot of grouping. So if there's stuff that you want to do to all your divs or to all this or to all that, it's a quick way to be able to do it. All right. And you say, well, that sounds like a lot of the stuff that you do with CSS. Yeah, it is. All right. Because what do selectors work with? They work with CSS. What are selectors? They're CSS. All right. There's Focusable. So you can only worry about things that can actually receive the focus. Hopefully you know this already, but if you've got a form, for instance, typically the label on a form can't receive the focus, but the associated text box with a label can, type of an idea. All right. Tabable, as it says, it allows you to limit elements only to those that can be tabbed to. So there are some examples in here that the idea is you click on these things and it adds the images, it does whatever. But what we're looking for is not too much pizzazz. Again, I mentioned this before, you don't want to put in so much pizzazz that the message gets lost, but you want it to look good, you want it to look up to date, and you want some special effects in there. All right? Maybe not as many on Uber site, BTC Uber site, than you'd see on other sites. All right, so next in here, and I don't know what page this is on, but they talk about using positioning. All right, and this is the example that I put in here. It's page 468 in the book. And as it says, a great advantage is the capability to position items relative to other elements and handle collisions. You now know what collisions are. This is the same kind of collision that we talked about when we went over that simple game. You know, do you want it set up so that if two elements are close to one another, which one do you want to basically have the focus? Which one do you want to be in the foreground? Which one do you want to be in the background? And sometimes you want to do that. You don't want to have to worry about things like z-indexes. It's just like, hey, if it's this, I want this to be in the foreground. If it's that, I want that to be in the foreground, type of an idea. All right, so I'm not going to go through this, but they talk about the position elements and some of the stuff that you can use with it. Again, what I grabbed in here was this example. As you can see, I grabbed it. It's from jQueryui.com, and it's the position. And what it explains in here in a little bit more depth are all the different things that you can do along with this. And then there's a pretty simple example of how it can be used. Now, some of the examples that are used in here, yeah, this is that one I mentioned before. So some of them are kind of contrived, you know, in that that's not the way or the reason you'd probably use them. But I think they did this for effect, just so something stood out so you could see a way that it could be used. All right. What happens here with a bunch of these exercises, some of them, the image will stay static on the page. All right, but it says image follows the mouse cursor. Like if it's one image, you can drag and it'll move around the screen, type of an idea. All right. And again, you might have reason to use something like that. You might never have reason to use something like that. All right. All right. Chapter 17 is one of the more, okay, I'll put it this way. You may or may not agree, but fun chapters in the book. All right. And let me show you what I mean. Again, this was nothing I created. I found this online. And you say, well, there's only one example in here. And yes, there is. It's one example, and it's really not that big, you know, for a whole chapter. But it's under the jQueryui.com effect. What's neat about it is it allows you, and for some reason it takes a while to load up, but it shows you all the different effects and an example. So you'll notice there's a blind. Run the effect. Well, that's pretty obvious exactly what's happening in there. I can go down here and I can grab puff. Run the effect. Okay? So you can look at all of the major effects that are discussed in this chapter, and they're all shown in here. All right? Again, some of these might make sense in your website regardless of what it is, and some of them might never make sense to use. All right? Sometimes people look at those and they get more confused when they look at some of the stuff that's in there. All right? So what they discuss in here are many of these methods. So the ones that you see right there on the page, and that is the chart that's on pages 476 and 477 in the book. That's the example that I just provided for you. All right, I think it's much easier for you to take a look and see things in an actual working environment than it is to take a look at a table. All right. So as it says, methods to apply effects, how easing, and we talked about easing in an earlier chapter, ways to add cool effects when hiding and showing elements, how to apply effects to class changes, and how to apply different animation effects when you position or reposition elements. So the purpose of this section is to introduce you to the effects that the jQuery UI provides. And again, the ones that you see right here are shown in the book on 476 and 477. They're very much dovetail with that example that I just showed you that I put out there on the system. All right? All right. Now here, if you go out, they give you the easings thing. This isn't, so they show you examples of the easings. So you can start taking a look at how different things work. All right. I also showed you in an earlier chapter, I think there was like Matt Lewin or something like that. He had a bunch of easing examples out there too in a demo. And I put that out there for you earlier as well. Again, it would be stupid of me to say, okay, I counted in here and there's 712 effects. You have to put all 712 of them into your website. Because, it just really wouldn't make any sense. All right? So they've got an example here, the first one, okay, which is on 479, 480, 481, and 482. As it says, you apply several different effects to image elements. All right, so each element has got different effects. Notice there's a shake, there's a scale, there's a slide, etc. So how do you learn? You just run the example. And as always, I provided the examples also. Or did I? No, maybe I didn't. Oh, yeah, they're in the source. All right, and this one is what? So when you click each one, okay, and again, it depends on what it is you're trying to do. All right, again, if I was doing some kind of a game, especially where I was blowing people up, something like that might be really cool to incorporate in there. All right, I don't know if you want to exactly show a car going into pieces or something like that. Probably not. All right, that's why I said it always depends on what it is you're talking about. As they mentioned here, an important part of jQuery UI effects is the capability to animate transitions when applying classes to elements. So you can add classes while you're doing things, remove, switch, and toggle. You've seen this kind of thing before. The example that's in here, again, a little bit contrived because are you really going to want, I think this, yeah. So notice if I click remove class, okay, toggle class, switch class. Again, as always, it depends on what it is you're trying to do. All right. And again, working with this, hide, show, and toggle. You've looked at these before. All right. Some of these, the examples that are in here, these menu options, they're kind of stupid, to be honest with you. You probably wouldn't use them because they don't look very cool. All right. All right, so you can move that around. Again, kind of a silly example. No, I already showed you that one. So they're showing how to use the same kind of effects with menus. All right. Now, like I said, there wasn't that much in there, so let's take a look at what I put in here for your next assignment. The good news is, especially if you don't like to listen to me talk, that you won't have to for a while now. And hopefully everybody, as far as I can tell, everybody who's in here, you've already had 2 assignments. First assignment, most everybody has got it done. The second assignment, which is due a week or 2 after break, that was to cover the material basically in chapters 12 to 15. All right. must have too much stuff open. Come on, just open. All right, so this is the third assignment. As it says, for this third assignment, you're going to be doing stuff mainly from chapter 16 through 19. For chapter 16, I'd like you to go out to that jQuery, and you can see that I hyperlinked everything in here. Go out to the jQuery UI, go to the theme roller page, take a look at it, look at a theme that you like, and just make a couple changes. Change a couple colors or a couple something, all right? And use that, all right? Then at least take a look at the other stuff that's in here. All right, it says ideally you'd be able to use one or more of these, but you may not, depending on the way your site is set up. From chapter 17, on those effects. But again, you're not impressing me by saying this is my jQuery effects page on a BTC Uber site. All right, because I don't know why you'd have something like that in there. But there may be a really good reason or a good way that you could see going through some of those examples and putting 2 or 3 of those things in there. All right. All right, what we'll talk about in the next class, but just so you see this now, chapter 18 is going to talk about different ways you can do draggable, droppable, resizable, selectable, and sortable things. So I asked you to go in and try to look at some of that stuff. And then finally from chapter 19, autocomplete. All right, what's an example of an autocomplete? Maybe, for example, maybe instead of having radio buttons with each of the campuses on there, all right, maybe you instead just put it in as a text box and you add an autocomplete. So if somebody puts in M, it would bring up Milton and it would bring up Monroe type of an idea, all right? Spinners, accordions, progress bars, we'll look at all this stuff in the next class. Slider bar, tab panel, and again, if you look at these and you want to see some examples, as I already mentioned to you, there's a whole bunch of different examples in here. The stuff that's in chapter 18, I don't know how many total there are, but there's quite a few. And then in chapter 19, what I did was all the major things that they talked about in here, I just put their examples in. So again, you may have already used some of this stuff, but here's an example. There's buttons. So they have different formats of buttons that you can use. I should close some of these. Maybe this would open faster then. All right, so creating your own buttons type of an idea. All right, accordions, which you may have very well have worked with even last semester already. Typically a good place for an accordion, maybe you decide you want to put an Uber FAQ page, and you put in something like that. FAQs, and accordions kind of go hand in hand with one another. All right. So these are the things, again, that I want you to at least take a look at for using. Now, after break, the next 3 weeks, all right, are going to be lab. So the week of the 28th, the week of the 6th, or the 4th, I should say, and the week of the 11th. And my hope is by that time, everybody is caught up. All right, so if you are behind, if you've turned in little to nothing, ideally, you'll have stuff turned in. It's getting very hard because I'm not saying necessarily in this class, but in some of my classes, all right, there are people have turned in nothing. And by next Monday, I have to have midterm grades done. All right. And one last thing I want to mention to you, all right, and I'm finished, but one last thing is, if you didn't know this already, if you are on the virtual desktop, and again, I have no idea outside of this class if you're using the virtual desktop when you're at home, if you're using it maybe because you can do your C# on there, you can do anything that you need to do on there. But the point is, if you're using the virtual desktop, what you should be doing at least once a week is you should be going to start here, go up to where it says Windows Security, go down to the little red thing that comes up over here, click that button, and choose Restart. You should be restarting the virtual desktop at least, you shouldn't have to do it more than once a week. I will tell you, if you accidentally do the shutdown, it might be down for close to an hour. So you don't want to choose that one. All right? But with the restart, it's going to take a good 5 to 10 minutes, and then it'll restart. But the stuff that they're doing in here, because I'm not a hardware guy, but Terry just told me that if you knew all the different stuff we're doing and the different machines, etc., you're banging off of, it's just going to make sure that there's a better chance that your virtual desktop experience will be a good one for you doing that. All right? Questions? So again, we'll go over chapters 18 and 19 on Wednesday, and then the 3 weeks that you come back, the next 3 weeks are going to be lab. Well, the only other thing I would say, and I forgot to tell you this, I'm going to go upstairs and grab an envelope now. But again, if you do go down up to the P drive, at least for my classes, all right. So if you go, for example, for this class, if you go to the 167 spring, yeah, it's that time. It's course evaluation time, because after this week, we're halfway through the semester. All right. So if you bring that particular thing up, or at least try to, like I said, I've got way too much stuff open here. But so if you bring that up, it's going to come up and look real huge. Just hit the escape key and it'll be fine. You don't have to save it. This is all filled in. It is anonymous. But please, again, I still had somebody last semester wrote yes for everything, manually, with a pen. All right? And if you click here, it gives you the scale. So the course content was consistent. All right, average. Boom. That's all you got to do for all those. And I will tell you that if you look, this is the second page here. If you've got, I appreciate suggestions, but what new courses? That's how we were able to add some of the new courses we've been able to add in the last couple of years. All right, if they're non-IT, because literally I've had people who want courses in Japanese and stuff. That's not going to happen through our division. All right, but if there's IT courses, because people have asked me, what about a gaming course? What about this? Chances are pretty good if they're going to have a gaming course here, they're going to have it at night, and they're going to have somebody who does it for a living that they'll bring in here to teach it. All right? Because, I mean, me teaching myself Unity and then teaching you, I don't think it'd be worth your money. You don't have to all shake your heads, yes. But, all right. All right. So that's it. So, again, I will go upstairs right now and get an envelope. You don't have to necessarily do it right now. But if you can, before you leave Thursday, unless you're here Friday, please do course evaluations. I read them. My boss loves reading them. All right? That's all I've got.